Hi, going to talk today about thinking like a terrorist and using words. Okay, um, read the reports on this bombing out of Afghanistan where the CIA agents died. Um, tremendous, significant loss of life, and my heart goes out to you if you have a family member over there that's one of these people. But we're having a conceptual conversation here, and this is not personal. Um, the media has been mixing. It's been using a lot of rhetoric, and we need to learn to filter through rhetoric. The issue over here in Afghanistan is not an issue of terrorism. It's an act of war. And here's why. Looking at a strategic planner's mindset, you have to realize that you're conducting a battle for the freedom of your country, a country that, I might add, that no nation in 2,000 years has conquered. Even Alexander the Great didn't conquer Afghanistan. Okay? So, looking at this, if you are a commander that has very little resources but very loyal troops that are willing to do things, what do? Use them to your best advantage. You send spies into the enemy's mix. You get an up-front view of their operations. You get to know their patterns of movement inside, the equipment they're using, their training methods, and everything else. And the issue in dealing with the CIA as an agent, you get paid. So you send 2, 3, 4, 5 guys over there. If they die, they die. They come back. You tell the CIA this. Tell the infidel this. So you go tell them that, and they bring back a whole lot of things because you tell them to keep their eyes open. Obviously, this guy has been around enough back and forth that he gathered a lot of information for his commander. And when his usefulness was done to that point, he was off as a special operations soldier is often to go off and attack the enemy. And he did a pretty good job of it. You see, that was a soldier killing other soldiers. That was an act of war. Driving a van into a soccer stadium, detonating a bomb, and they were killing 1,000 civilians, that's an act of terrorism. Because it makes the population nervous to go anywhere or do anything. We talked yesterday about how you run a terrorist operation if you're really wanting to scare people. Easy ways to do it. Look at the underwear bomber. You could thinly say, okay, that was an act of terrorism because it disrupted how we're going to handle some things. But also we have to ask some questions. Now, I'm far from a conspiracy theorist. I deal in facts in my job. But there are some pretty interesting some interesting coincidences surrounding this Detroit event. The Patriot Act was getting ready to lapse, or large portions of it were getting ready to lapse, January 1st. Nancy Pelosi sits on the Hill and says, okay, we've spent a lot of time in healthcare and these other things. We need to bounce this back into February, which gave it basically a 30-day reprieve. How do you make sure you get a bill passed real quickly? You make sure there's a fervent need for it. People are clamoring from it. My God, go read the Fox News polls on whether or not we have enough security. Look at how the questions are asked to you. If, in their poll, do you believe that there is enough, we're doing enough, and it includes millimeter wave scanning in the yes answer. So even if you're answering yes, you're asking, yes, we're doing enough, but we need more. It's not a very scientific poll. It's a skewed way to get answers. And of course, if you look at the poll, everybody says no, and it's huge. The last time I looked at it, it was 14,000 people, and like 10% said yes, we're doing enough, but the 10% yes, and it did enough, still said we need millimeter wave scanners. Another interesting point is the funding for those scanners were put forward before this event, but there really wasn't a need for them. So you developed a need. I saw something the other day that really did concern me greatly, and I have yet to fact check it, and I will, but I'm going to go ahead and state it here with the caveat that it's not fully vetted. But I saw some things the other day from reputable sources stating that 67% of the employees of the Department of Defense, which includes all the Army, the Marine Corps, the Navy, the Coast Guard, the Air Force, Merchant Marine, all those guys, Department of Defense, 65% of the personnel, including those people, are private contractors. So 6.7 people out of 10 are civilian private contractors that work for the Department of Defense. .3 are soldiers, sailors, and Marines, Air Force Airmen. That makes you think for a minute, doesn't it? I'm in private business. When you're in private business, you have to create a need for your product. You have to identify a need, and you have to continue to create a need. You have to continue to create viable product to continue to sell. But for that new viable product, you have to create new need for that product. The more of these things I see, the more of these things I begin to think. The paradigm of normal thought does not necessarily work in today's world. Or does it? I don't believe it does. Because normal, rational, logical people seem to act a certain way. And if you know people act a certain way and you want to do something different or cause them to act, you do events to get them to adjust and do what you want them to do. When the military-industrial complex has gotten to privatized and 6.7 or 67% of it is private, we'd be very concerned about our foreign policy. We'd be very, very concerned about what we're doing. Because now war is a for-profit business. More so than just building guns and bombs and rifles. It's intelligence. It's private security. It's private logistics. I think perhaps if we went back to an entirely governmental military, in other words, everybody that worked at the Department of Defense needed to be in a uniform. Soldier, sailor, Marine, airman, whatever. I believe a lot of the activities that we have would stop. Think about that. I was a Marine. After September the 11th, I had a $150,000 a year job offered to me to do the things that I used to do many, many years ago in the Marine Corps. Why? Because as a private individual, the government had plausible deniability. Now think about that. Pay a sergeant or a lieutenant $35,000 a year. You see what I'm getting at? The people that do things in uniform are very honorable people in general. It's the people who are in uniform that get out of uniform and still do the same job that we have to question. Because I know at 20 years of age, if I'd been offered a job making 5 times what I was making doing the same job, I'd do it in a heartbeat. So, thinking like a terrorist, you have to ask the question, really, who is the terrorist? And that's where I'm going to leave you at today. Good luck.